Welcome to the Vikings Now. I'm your host, Patrick Seatman. On today's video, we're going to be going over all 17 of the upcoming Minnesota Vikings free agents. The Vikings have 17 players set to hit free agency. We're going to be breaking down if they're going to bring them back, let them walk, and a couple guys that I think the Vikings really need to bring back. But before we get into that, I want to make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. I had my bosses actually in my ear before we hopped in the recording studio and just like, hey, I guarantee you can't pick up 25 new subs on today's video. I'm going to challenge you guys. If you guys are a new subscriber here, first time coming across Vikings Now by Chat Sports, just type me down below if this is your first time hitting the subscribe button. Lock us in as your go-to Vikings offseason channels. News, rumors, draft coverage, whatever it may be, lock us in. Hit that sub button right now. First free agent I want to touch on is Dalvin Tomlinson, the nose tackle that we picked up from the New York Giants a couple of off seasons ago. He is set to hit free agency this upcoming year, and his 2022 stats, he had 25 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and PFF had him locked in at a 77.1 PFF grade. I think Dalvin Tomlinson, he would be a great guy to bring back, but it's got to be for that right price. And I'm curious to see if a guy like Brian Flores, what type of defensive lineman he will want to bring into the building. But Dalvin Tomlinson, for the right price, definitely want to bring him back. Number 2 on this list, Patrick Peterson. The Vikings cornerback group has been shaky in the past couple of years, and a guy like Patrick Peterson, who is set to be an unrestricted free agent, I'm not saying he would be a must to bring back in this upcoming year, but he would definitely be helpful because he is set to be a free agent. Duke Shelley is set to be a free agent, and the Vikings actually only have 3 current corners on their roster set for next season. That's Cam Dantzler, Andrew Booth, and a Caleb Evans. And with what Pat Pete did this past season, I thought he was pretty solid. Only giving up 43 receptions on 73 targets, just under 550 yards allowed. Had 5 interceptions, including that huge 2-interception game in Buffalo with 9 pass breakups and a PFF grade of 80.7. But bringing back Pat Pete, I think Peterson was really good in spots this past season. He had that big game in Buffalo where he had the game-sealing pick against Josh Allen in overtime. But at the later half of the year, and especially in those 2 Giants games where Isaiah Hodgins cooked him, he looked like an old corner in the NFL. But I do want to get your guys' thoughts and kind of gauge the pulse of the Vikings fan base on this one. Would you bring back Pat Pete? Type Y for yes or type N for no. I'm going to make this the pinned comment on today's video. So if you get hit with a YouTube ad break, take advantage of it, let it play, go down there and answer today's pinned question. Would you bring back Pat Pete? Number 3 on this list is the center, Garrett Bradbuy. It's so funny during this season when Garrett Bradbuy got hurt, we really saw the Vikings offensive line dip. And I was saying to myself, who would have thought how much I would have wanted Garrett Bradbuy back during last season? His injury really derailed this offensive line. Overall, PFF graded him out at a 70.2 overall with a pass blocking grade of 68.1 and a run block grade of 72.4. Has Garrett Bradbuy lived up to that first-round selection that we took him in, I believe, the 2019 draft? Probably not, but I still think Bradbury is a top 15-ish center in the NFL. Spotrac did a kind of contract projection for Garrett Bradbuy, and I think this is way too much. I don't think he'll command 12 mil on the open market. Could it be around 8 or 9? Definitely. But for 12 mil, I wouldn't want the Vikes bringing back Garrett Bradbury, but around the 8 and 9 mil range, definitely. Number 4 on the Vikings free agents is the kicker, actually, Greg Joseph. Greg Joseph, I feel like he's been solid for the Vikings over the past couple years. Obviously, he had that huge 61 game-winning field goal kick against the Giants at week 15 of the regular season. But he has been shaky. He's had problems with missing extra points. I believe he missed 5 from this past year. Overall, I think it may be time to move off Greg Joseph. But again, get your guys' pulse on this. Do you want Greg Joseph back for next season? If he's the kicker for the Vikes, are you going to be happy for it? Type 1 for yes or type 2 for no. Another free agent for the Vikes is Nick Mullins, the backup quarterback. He is set to hit free agency this year. Do I expect the Vikings to bring him back? I don't think so. I would expect actually Kevin O'Connell to maybe bring in one of his guys as a backup quarterback, or maybe the Vikings could draft a guy like Hendon Hooker, Anthony Richardson, who knows, but I don't expect Nick Mullins to be back with the Vikes. Now moving back to the secondary, Chandon Sullivan is set to become a free agent as well for the Minnesota Vikings. He was the slot corner for the Vikes this past season, and he had an okay year. I mean, he was really shaky in some spots. He really got taken advantage of in that Giants playoff game. But at PFF graded him out as 55.8 overall with a 60.2 coverage grade, and against the run, he was okay at 67.4. Overall, Chandon Sullivan, I feel like he was okay last year for the Vikes, but I definitely think with Brian Flores coming in, they're going to need that upgrade at corner, and I think we could be seeing Chandon Sullivan on his way out. Now, next up on here, this hurts me to say, Irv Smith Jr., he's going to set to be a free agent next year. And Irv, for the past couple of seasons, if you look at like breakout candidates going into the year, I had Irv at the top of my list. But with the emergence of TJ Hockenson, I don't expect Irv Smith to be back. And was he a bust? I mean, we took him with the 50th overall pick 3 or 4 drafts ago, the second rounder out of Alabama. And obviously injuries derailed Irv Smith's career. But I don't think he lived up to expectations in Minnesota. I thought he was going to be maybe that Jordan Reed type of tight end set at 6'2" for Kirk Cousins. He just never really lived up to that. But I want to know what you guys have to say. What is your one word to describe Irv's career with the Minnesota Vikings? I'm going to say this. You're not allowed to say injuries. One word to describe Irv Smith's career with the Minnesota Vikings. Let me know down below. We'll fly through the next couple of these. Jonathan Bullard, he had an okay year for this Vikings in the past season. I thought he was okay. I would like to bring him back, but again, it's going to be curious to see what type of guys Brian Flores keeps on defense and what guys he lets go. Austin Schlottmann, the center, he filled in for Garrett Bradbuy when Bradbury was injured, and guess what? He wasn't too good. Schlottmann, he did get hurt, so he will be recovering for a majority of the offseason. PFF, I mean, not too hot. 48.7 overall, pass block, 46.1, run block, 55.3. I don't expect Schlottmann to be back. He is going to be rehabbing most of the offseason. It's going to be curious to see where he bounces around in the NFL. But then our long snapper, Andrew DePaula, is next up on this list. If you guys don't know, this is not just your ordinary long snapper. This is all-pro long snapper Andrew DePaula. Obviously, I would love to bring him back. And while you guys are watching this video, just spam 42 in the comments. We have an all-pro long snapper. He's been great for the Vikings for the past couple of years. Finally got his all-pro nod this season. So shout out to him. He is set to become a free agent. I hope the Vikings bring him back. Just spam 42, his jersey number, in the comments to show some love to the all-pro long snapper. Next up here is Alexander Mattison, the backup running back for the Vikings over the past couple of years. This one hurts. I really thought Mattison was going to work out in Minnesota, but I do expect him to be leaving. His career stats, 401 carries, just under 1,700 yards, just over 4 yards per carry with 11 touchdowns on his short career in Minnesota. I don't expect him to be back. Sneaky team that I think Mattison could go to is actually the Buffalo Bills. I think just they need some physicality in their run game, and I expect them to kind of go after him hard. Maybe pair him up with Dalvin Cook's brother, James Cook, would be kind of full circle for Alexander Mattison. Next up is Tonga, the big old D lineman, the fat boy. I love him. Big old belly on Tonga. I hope they bring him back. Do I think so? Probably not. It's going to be curious to see how much he demands over in the free agent market. And then Blake Brandel, the tight end or the swing tackle for the Vikes this past year. I actually like him. He was the 6th rounder, I believe, out of Oregon State. He's a big dude. Doesn't really have too much good wiggle or mobility. When the other DNs try to get under him and just kind of speed rush around him, that's really where he struggles. But I thought he was solid being a swing tackle when Brian O'Neill got hurt and Christian Darrisaw was hurt this past year. Blake Brandel, wouldn't mind bringing him back. Now the tight end, Ben Ellefson. I really think he's out of town. Obviously, Kevin O'Connell brought him in. Do I think he's going to be there for the Vikings next season on that roster? Probably not. You know, TJ Hockenson, I expect TJ to get extended in this upcoming offseason. Ben Ellefson, I just don't really think there's a spot for him on the Minnesota Vikings. Not the greatest blocker, not the greatest pass catcher, and I think TJ Hockenson will be getting the majority of those reps, obviously at tight end, and maybe see the Vikings draft a tight end in the later rounds. Now, Oli Udoh, he is a free agent, and going into this year, if we're talking swing tackles for the Minnesota Vikings, I did not expect Oli Udoh to be this good. PFF graded him out at a 73.6 overall grade, and that pass blocking grade at 76.8. Udoh was not bad this past year. And if you guys remember when Brian O'Neill, awful. I mean, I hate that this had to happen to him. When he went out for the rest of the year and he had to step in versus the Packers, Bears, and in the wildcard game against the Giants, he only allowed 2 pressures over those 3 games. I thought Udoh was fantastic, especially with the Vikings kind of experiment to have him play guard last season and that not really working out, I will say Uda, he impressed me. And if we're talking swing tackles between him and Blake Brandel on Vikings tackles I want to bring back, give me Oli Uda any day of the week. Here we go, second to last name on the list, Chris Boyd, the locker room guy. I mean, he is so good in the locker room. I'm sure you guys see him all over Vikings social media. He's always the one in the offseason. He's bringing the energy. He's a great locker room guy. Chris Boyd, though, he was pretty good on special teams this past year, but just as a corner, I just don't really think he has a spot in the Brian Flores system. He's not good at man-to-man. He's more of a coverage corner, more of a sit-back, soft zone type of corner, and he wasn't able to do anything with Ed Donatel. So I definitely don't think he'll be able to do anything with Brian Flores. And last up on this list, maybe a name most Vikings fans forgot about, Olabisi Johnson. Olabisi Johnson during his rookie campaign when he filled in for Adam Thielen when he got hurt, I thought he was great. But if you guys do remember, before the start of the season, he actually did tear his ACL. So if we're talking about Vikings weapons, and obviously Adam Thielen could be a cut casualty for the Minnesota Vikings, remember this name. Remember BC Johnson is maybe, let's just say the Vikings, they say, we're not drafting wide receiver. We're not even picking up a wide receiver in free agency. Maybe we have Justin Jefferson as wide receiver 1, KJ Osborne as wide receiver 2, and then Jalen Naylor and Olabisi Johnson being that 3-4 with maybe Jalen Reagor thrown in there too. Just kind of keep Olabisi Johnson in the back of your head. He tore his ACL at the beginning of last season, so we never got to see him play. But when he did play for the Vikings in the past, he was pretty productive. I would love to see if Olabisi Johnson can maybe be that 3-4 wide receiver for the Vikings next season. But before we head on out of here, if you guys just had to pick one name, you guys only get one name. Who do the Vikings need to bring back? One name on this list. My consensus here, I can't believe I'm saying this right now. I think it's got to be Garrett Bradbuy. I think he's got to be the one you got to bring back. We saw how bad the offensive line, especially the interior, played when he got hurt. I never thought I would be saying it, but Garrett Bradbuy, for me, he is the Viking I want to bring back the most. But let me know, get down in the comments, who do the Vikings need to bring back for the 2023 NFL season? See you guys next time. Subscribe, like the video, and as always, Skol Vikes.